Hi, this is My Cheating Diary. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story. Now, let's begin. When I married David, I believed I was closing one chapter of my life and opening a steadier, safer one. I told myself I wanted simplicity, calm, a second chance at building something lasting. A new marriage, a new home, a new family. I knew he had a son, 20, quiet, still finding his way. But I told myself that would settle naturally with time. I was ready for the awkwardness, ready for patience, ready to prove I could be more than just the woman who came after. I thought I was prepared, but the truth is, nothing prepares you for the things you don't dare even name. At first, everything seemed perfect. David was grateful, almost relieved to have me there, someone to share the house with, someone to soften the edges of his long business trips and busy days. To friends and family, I was what he needed, elegant, dependable, steady. They saw us as a picture of balance. Even his son, at least outwardly, greeted me with politeness, with courtesy beyond his years. But beneath that surface, I felt something from the very beginning. His eyes, when they lingered, were too direct, too sharp for someone his age. Not hostile, not suspicious, something else. Something that unsettled me because I recognized it. Because part of me, though I hated to admit it, answered back. He was still so young, hovering between the edge of youth and adulthood, yet already carrying himself with a kind of restless intensity. I noticed it in the way he filled the house with nervous energy, pacing rooms, turning music too loud, then too quiet, restless as if nothing could hold his focus. I told myself it was normal, just a stage, a young man trying to steady himself. But sometimes when I caught his eyes, I felt a flicker of something more, something that carried weight far beyond a polite glance. And to my shame, it didn't repulse me. It frightened me because a piece of me felt it too. I tried to rationalize it away. I busied myself with small rituals, cooking dinners, tidying the rooms, planning weekends so the house would feel like a home. I laughed at David's tired jokes, rested my hand on his arm at gatherings, played my role so seamlessly that no one, least of all David, could ever imagine anything out of place. But silence has its own language, and it was in the silence that everything dangerous lived. It lived in the moments when I brushed past him in the hallway and felt my pulse quicken. It lived in the laughter we shared over a silly show that felt somehow too private, too secret. It lived in the stillness of late nights when the house was quiet, and I realized I was listening for his footsteps instead of my husband's. I told myself it was just adjustment, that the strangeness would fade. But the more I tried to bury it, the more it rooted itself inside me. The first time David traveled after our wedding, leaving me alone with his son, the house seemed to breathe differently. The silence pressed at my skin, heavy, insistent. I remember making tea, trying to keep things ordinary, as if clinging to the small rituals could anchor me. We sat together in the living room, mugs warming our hands, speaking of nothing, weather, books, the trivial things that people say when they're afraid of saying what they mean. He looked distracted, distant, and I asked if he was all right. The words seemed so harmless, but they carried more weight than I intended. His shrug was casual, but his eyes were not. And when I shifted slightly closer, not even thinking, my hand brushed against his arm. The spark that leapt through me nearly stole my breath. My voice betrayed me before I could stop it. "You've changed." The words were soft, barely more than a whisper, and when he muttered back, "I can't," something inside me cracked. A line had been crossed, even if nothing visible happened. I forced a smile, faint and unreadable, but inside my heart pounded so hard it hurt. That moment haunted me for weeks. After that night, the atmosphere thickened. Every conversation clipped itself short. Every meal together felt like balancing on a wire. We avoided each other, but avoidance was a lie too thin to hide behind. The truth lingered in every accidental glance, in every silence stretched too long. I threw myself into routines. I cooked elaborate meals. I reorganized closets. I stayed up late, folding laundry I could have left for the morning. Anything to fill the hours. Anything to keep me from dwelling on the way my pulse reacted when I heard his footsteps on the stairs. But nothing erased it. And the next trip came, as I knew it would. Another empty house, another silence swelling like a storm cloud. That evening he found me in the den, a book forgotten in my lap, lamplight brushing across my hair. I had been pretending to read, but the truth is I was only waiting. For what? I didn't dare say aloud. His words spilled out before he could stop them. I can't stop thinking about this. I know it's wrong, but every time I see you, I lose control. For a long moment, I said nothing. My heart raced, my hands trembled, but my body wouldn't move. Then I stood, almost against my own will, and crossed the space between us. I lifted his chin gently, forcing his eyes to meet mine, and whispered the truth I had buried for too long. You're not alone in that. Sometimes, feelings don't care about rules. My voice shook because I was terrified, not only of him, but of myself. The air between us grew heavy, electric. I felt the line blur beneath my feet, the line I had sworn I would never step across. And yet, even without a single kiss, I knew we had already gone too far. The weeks that followed were a haze of shadows. I lived two lives, the wife who smiled at her husband, who cooked and cleaned and played her role, and the woman who carried a secret that pressed against her ribs like a stone. I tried to convince myself that silence could smother it, that if I avoided him long enough, it would die on its own. But it didn't. Every laugh that drifted from another room tightened my chest. Every trace of his cologne in the hallway stole my breath. I buried myself in chores, in endless distractions, but nothing dulled it. The unease didn't fade, it sharpened, cutting deeper every day. One night, I sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, a half-finished glass of wine beside me, staring at the stars like they might offer answers. He found me there, his voice tentative as he asked, "Can't sleep?" I didn't look at him right away. My eyes stayed on the horizon, my voice low. "Some things," I murmured, "are louder in the dark." The silence stretched between us, and then I heard myself asking what I had been too afraid to speak. Do you ever wish it had never happened? My heart pounded with the weight of that confession. His answer was honest, painful. I just wish I knew how to stop wanting it. And when his hand slipped into mine under the blanket, I didn't pull away. That quiet moment, that shared weight, was more intimate than anything else we had done. I should have been relieved that it stopped there, but instead it left me more unsteady than ever. When David announced another business trip, 3 nights away, I felt the air shift instantly. Neither of us spoke, but we both knew. On the second night, I found myself at his door, my hand trembling as I knocked softly. When he opened it, his eyes met mine, tired and restless, and I knew I had already betrayed myself by being there. "I can't sleep," I whispered, my voice breaking. He let me in, and we sat on the edge of his bed, so close our shoulders nearly touched. Silence swelled until I could no longer hold it in. "I've been fighting this," I admitted, my throat tight. "I don't want to keep hurting." I don't want to keep lying. My words felt like a confession, a surrender. He reached for my hand, steadying me, anchoring me. "Then let's stop pretending," he murmured. And with those words, the fragile barrier we had clung to finally broke. There were no kisses, no deliberate embraces that night. Only the unbearable tension of being too close, the near touch of fingers that seemed to meet by accident. The silence that spoke what neither of us could say. And in that charged stillness, I realized that even without a single touch, we had already gone too far. At dawn, I slipped from his room, forcing myself into the kitchen. I set breakfast on the table, eggs, toast, coffee, my silent attempt to rewrite the night as if routine could erase it. When he came down, I smiled faintly, pretending, hiding, but the truth pressed against my chest like fire. Food could not undo it, nothing could. And now when I look at him, I know with a certainty that terrifies me. We have stepped too far into the gray. There is no returning to what we were, no retreating to innocence. The world will never see it, but we will carry it every day in silence. Because some truths, once awakened, can never be put back to sleep. Thanks for being part of this story. If you'd like to hear more, feel free to subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next diary entry. I'm curious, what do you think about this one? Maybe you've lived through something similar. Drop your story in the comments below. Thank you for taking the time to listen.